Hello, my friends. Today, I am excited to share with you episode 2 of my ongoing series, Gaia. Today, we meet Leviathan, the great and ancient god serpent of the sea, whose mysterious priestesses provide the magic and resources that the people of Gaia need to survive. If that sounds interesting to you, then you can use your mysterious powers to click that like button, and if you are feeling particularly omnipotent, you can subscribe as well. I truly hope you enjoy the story today.
I was greatly enjoying the wide open sea right up until the giant sea serpent god showed up. Up until then, traveling by sea was quite relaxing. I had been staring at the waves lapping at the side of the boat, lazily scanning the horizon for signs of land and our destination. I was the first to see the mighty serpent's giant head slowly rise above the waves. I sat up and stiffened like a board. I wanted to yell, but my voice was paralyzed. Thankfully, Travis noticed the monster right after I did, and he jumped to the ready. He placed one foot on the edge of the boat, apparently ready to jump overboard, and his hand crackled with magic. He had a spell prepared in the palm of his hand. The air around it glowed blue, and it filled the air with a threatening, high-pitched tone. Leviathan's head climbed above the waves. It rose and rose up into the air and into the sky, revealing more and more of its body. It was thicker than a battleship and covered with shining, razor-sharp scales that sparkled brilliantly in the sun. It was like a snake flying through the air, weaving intricate knots in the sky. This act seemed to leave behind magical energies in the air itself, as if Leviathan's movements were its way of summoning magical energy from the ether, or wherever magic comes from. The air itself started to crackle, and water droplets from the ocean defied gravity to rise up into our eyes. The humble wooden sailboat wobbled and creaked loudly. It seemed to be whimpering and surrendering to its fate in the face of the hopelessly powerful force of nature before it. That force swam through the sky and lowered its head to examine us. Its face hovered above, looking down at us with eyes that appeared to be made of crystalline sapphire spheres. Its face had sharp and angular features, and was a brilliant mosaic of ocean-colored scales. It would have been the most beautiful thing I had ever seen if I hadn't been going to the bathroom in my pants. The sea god filled the sky and blocked out the sun. It was as massive as a small island, and its body was still emerging from the water. I could only imagine the powers that it must possess. Even an armada of battleships would not stand a chance against such a creature. I looked at Travis, sure that he must know what to do or be coming up with some sort of plan. But my heart dropped when I saw the look on his face. Even with his seemingly powerful magic and mysterious connection to this world, he just stood there in awe. I shook his arm. "What do we do?" I asked. He was silent for a moment, which told me more than his actual words.
"We might need to swim for it,"
he finally said. "Swim for it," I said. Our captain chuckled a dark, salty laugh. With my attention focused on the god serpent and my imminent death, I had forgotten he was there. He was standing and taking in Leviathan with tired eyes. He took a slow breath in through his nose, savoring the salty sea air for what he believed was his final time.
I always wanted to die at sea. I knew if I kept ferrying water priestesses, I would get my wish, sooner or later. I'm sorry for young bucks, but you knew what it meant to step onto this boat,
he said. I didn't, I protested.
It may be time for Leviathan to reclaim our lives, and it may not.
The water priestess chimed in. She had a calm and caring tone to her voice. She didn't seem to be scared in the least.
Do not fear the harsh reality of nature. Leviathan provides for us all, and in time we must give those gifts back, even our lives. There is only one thing to do now,
she said. She produced some prayer beads from somewhere in her robes. They were the same shades of the ocean as Leviathan's scales, and were made of precious stones, along with what appeared to be pearls and diamonds. With my limited knowledge of magic, even I recognized that she was wielding it as an expensive and powerful magical focus. She kneeled and began to speak softly into them, reciting some powerful incantation. They began to glow with that hum of magic that I had grown familiar with hearing. But the priestess's magic had a different feel to it. Travis's magic felt like a barking dog threatening from behind a gate, but her magic felt like a wolf stalking prey through the woods. It had a silent, sinister strength to it, and for a moment I was hopeful that she was casting some powerful spell that would save us. I couldn't resist asking, "What are you doing?"
I am expressing gratitude.
She said simply. I couldn't believe it. Water priestesses were servants of Leviathan and possessed incredible magical powers. It didn't make any sense that the sea monster would want to kill its own, or that she didn't have some sort of water magic that could help us escape. I wanted to argue with her, shake sense into her, and tell her how serious the situation was, but I was powerless. I watched in a tense silence, hoping that she knew what she was doing. She was totally focused on her prayers and incantations. Every motion of her hands and every word she spoke was done with complete mindfulness and presence. I had no idea how her ritual was supposed to go, but I could tell that she was performing it flawlessly. It was truly a beautiful and incredibly skilled production to watch that I could not appreciate at all, since I was anticipating being crushed into a fine paste by the bulk of the magical snake god looming over us. Leviathan didn't seem to be as nervous as I was, but it was intensely interested in her performance. It had lowered its head to be only a few feet above our heads. The shining, perfect crystalline spheres of its eyes stared down unblinking, drinking in every detail of us, and maybe even gazing into our souls. It had coiled its body around our tiny boat, leaving us no direction to escape and threatening to crush us all at a whim. Her invocation apparently complete, the priestess respectfully bowed before the serpent and awaited her fate. We waited in a strained silence. Her magical focus hummed with a soft power. The waves gently lapped onto Leviathan's scaled body. Travis's spell still crackled in his hand like an angry chihuahua, completely harmless to the danger, but poised to attack anyway, with reckless abandon. I held my breath. Leviathan's face was still as stone as its eyes began to glow. I feared that it was about to destroy us with lightning bolts or something, but then its eyes softened, and a moment of tranquility settled over it. With a deep, rumbling sigh, it slowly turned away, slicing through the waves and leaving us and the boat undisturbed. It returned to the fathomless abyss from which it had risen just moments before, apparently content with the priestess's ritual. Our captain let out a chuckle.
I guess I will have to stick around for a bit longer then.
He sat down on his seat and went back to steering the ship. Travis let the magical energy he had gathered dissipate back into the universe and let out a deep, relieved sigh. I finally let my breath out too and was a bit dizzy. It had been a scary moment, and my head was spinning from the excitement. Travis went to the back of the boat and sat with his head over the side for a while. It seemed he was recovering from the excitement as well, so to speak. The priestess was peacefully sitting back in her seat with her back to me. My nerves were wrecked while she was perfectly at ease, like she hadn't just almost been murdered by a horrible sea monster. I was compelled to talk to her, but I didn't know what to say. I resisted the urge to utter something inane, like, "So, how about that Leviathan?" That sure was scary. I almost pooped my pants. Thankfully, she seemed aware of my predicament and spoke first.
You didn't soil yourself, did you? I can heal wounds, but I'm no nurse. You will have to clean yourself, I'm afraid.
She had her back turned to me still, but I could tell by her voice that she had a playful smirk on her face. "How did you know it would let us go?" I finally asked.
I didn't.
She said calmly.
Leviathan will reclaim my powers and my life at sea one of these days. Those gifted with water magic always die at sea. I knew perfectly well that today could have been my day, as did your friend.
We both turned our looks and my ire at Travis, who was conveniently hiding his face over the side of the ship. He waved his hand in my general direction in a dismissive way and attempted to say something, but his voice was muffled, dry heaving. I knew it would be pointless to argue with him. I was just happy that we were still alive. I turned my attention back to the priestess. "You said earlier that you were expressing gratitude." She smiled and made space for me to sit next to her, sensing that I had a lot of questions.
Have you ever considered the idea of the ritual?
She asked. I responded. Of course I knew the word, but I had no idea where she was going with this. I politely shook my head, inviting her to continue.
Imagine for me that you are a little kid again. Someone gives you a gift. What happens next?
I thought back and considered myself as a child. After a moment of honest contemplation, I admitted to myself that I was actually quite the little jerk, as children often are. My mom says. What do you say when someone gives you something? I finally replied.
Then what?
She asked. Then I say, thank you, I said with my best child voice.
Did you mean it?
She asked. No, I said.
And the person you were thanking could tell, too. You can say the words, or go through the motions, let's say, but your performance betrays your true feelings. That is the true purpose of the ritual, to reveal the integrity of your emotions. Every time you shake hands, bow your head, or just say hello, the way you do it is what really matters.
Because the way you perform it is how the other person really knows you, I said. I surprised myself I was getting pretty deep. That community college intro-level philosophy class that I took was starting to pay off. So you were expressing your gratitude authentically, and Levithan saw that and let you go? I asked.
It's not that simple, but yes. I'm sure that if my faith wavered, Levithan would know.
She said. I spent a few moments in contemplation, considering her words. I was about to ask her another question when Travis clapped his hand on my back.
Land ho.
He boldly announced. Sure enough, there was an island in the distance that was rapidly growing bigger at our approach. It was a mountainous and rocky island, dull gray and brown in color. I felt disappointed to see it. Somewhere in my mind, I had been expecting lush greenery and sandy beaches like the tropical island we left. The more I thought about it, this giant rock had apparently been recently raised from the ocean's depths to extract resources. I suppose that meant there hadn't been time for much flora to grow, or for the waves of time to crunch boulders into pebbles and then into sand on the shores. A hastily built but large settlement came into view. Several wooden structures stood tall in 2 long rows across from each other, in what looked to be the town's main street. It was hard to make out in the distance, but it seemed the street was teeming with people and carriages. As we got closer, I could see the harbor was full of boats. It dawned on me that this is what it looks like when an entire town packs up to leave. We went past many larger ships on our way to a free spot on a long wooden pier. Many were large cargo ships with the mining company's logo on them. Some looked to be private vessels, and they were all leaving full or arriving empty. As we stepped onto the platform, I could see down Main Street. The buildings were a bit shoddy. Some even had broken windows, and none of them were painted. I suppose when you know your town is only going to last a matter of a few months at most, the quality of construction isn't too important. We disembarked from our tiny sailboat. It was dwarfed in size by the cargo galley we docked next to. I stood on a long pier made of wooden planks with crowds of people, mostly looking to be miners and sailors, busying themselves carrying things and shouting at each other. I stood for a moment and felt like the island we had landed on, but instead of waves crashing onto my shores, there were people bumping into me and cursing. The foul language wasn't just reserved for me. Sailors speak as they say was all around. I noticed particular concentrations of it as people tripped on the walkway and fell into each other. I looked down and saw that most of the boards were uneven. Someone could easily trip and fall, especially if they were an oblivious loudmouth who had no spatial awareness. Travis bounded onto the platform next to me with the energy of a puppy.
Heck yeah, let's go find that magic rock.
He led the way forward through the crowd until he immediately tripped and crashed into some men preparing a crate to be hoisted onto their ship. Travis lay in a pile of twisted limbs and colorful metaphors with the men while the crate swung out over the water. It was half secured by a rope and not quite ready to be lifted. It crashed into the side of the ship and spilled its contents into the water. A rainbow of fresh fruits tumbled into the sea. Apples, oranges, and even starfruits floated in the surf.
Arg! Look what you've done, ye wretched sea dog. Now me and my mates will die of scurvy on our voyage home,
Yelled one of the men. He rose from the dog pile and towered over it. He was a good 2 heads taller than me, and ridiculously muscular with grayish skin and hard eyes. I would have taken him for a barbarian or a pit fighter. He seemed like he wouldn't be out of place holding a giant 2-handed battle axe and covered in blood. Instead, he wore the loose-fitting garb of a sailor and a chef hat.
Oh, hush, Grog. Stop talking like you are a pirate.
A young woman with a head of furiously bushy reed hair stood from the pile as well, right after rolling Travis to the side with a vigorous kick. He grunted in pain while she looked down at him, fiery fury flashing in her sharp green eyes. Her fist shook at her side and seemed to be barely restrained by composure, much like her hair was barely contained by her chef hat.
The trip home only takes a day. Nobody is catching scurvy,
she said.
Yar, but our precious ingredients now be floatin' in the salty sea. I say we make the scoundrel walk the plank,
replied Grog.
Shut up, that isn't a thing,
she said.
We should make it a thing,
replied yet another pile member. A figure squirmed its way free from underneath Travis, rolling him to the side yet again. Travis clutched his ribs in pain from where to woman kicked him, while the final member of the trio he crashed into rose over him. He was what I can only describe as a lizard man. He had golden expressionless eyes, a long snout, and shiny silver scales for skin. He tasted the air with quick darts of his forked tongue, and stared down at Travis with the vertical black slits he had for pupils.
That crate had all our blood oranges. Tomorrow's breakfast will be ruined. You have to do something, Cleo,
he said. Do something she did. The fiery redhead grabbed Travis by the hair and leaned him up. She produced a menacing-looking kitchen knife from her belt and pointed it at his face.
I don't suppose that little sailboat you have there is carrying any freshly picked, high-quality gourmet fruits.
She gestured in my general direction. I was still standing next to our tiny sailboat. I hadn't even taken my first step before this chaos erupted. The water priestess and our old scruffy captain were still in the boat, watching along with me. We briefly looked at the empty boat and shrugged our shoulders at each other.
We have to host a state breakfast tomorrow morning for the senators attending the sinking ceremony. The senators, now the ingredients for our signature dish are gone,
she continued, attempting to convey the direness of the situation.
The sensational citrus breakfast is no more,
said the lizard man.
Whoa, guys, calm down now.
Travis carefully stood up with his hands raised in the air, attempting to pacify the knife-wielding woman that was in his face.
What's the big deal? It's just some apples or whatever. There has to be some fruit somewhere on this island.
Travis casually looked about at the barren rocky shores, while the culinary crew's patience boiled over.
Arg, send him to dine with the fishes in Davy Jones's locker.
Shut up, Grog.
Grog shut up and in fact gasped with the rest of his crew, as a husky voice came from the deck of their galley.
What is the problem here?
The voice asked, pausing for breath in between words. An enormous figure appeared above us at the railing of his ship, and looked down upon us with bovine interest.
Captain Chef.
The trio snapped to attention and stood in a straight line to face him. They stood with immaculate posture like soldiers as they addressed him in unison. Captain Chef made a casual gesture with his hand, and an unseen crew member rushed to put a boarding plank into place for him to descend to the dock. He took slow lumbering steps down to us. The board he walked down was quite thick, but it groaned and sagged under his presence. He was wearing a great featureless gray suit that must have been custom made to accommodate his blubberous belly. When he finally arrived, he towered over the rest of us along with Grog, but had twice the girth. He wore on his head a combination of a captain's hat and a chef's hat. It was pure white with 3 corners and an iconic chef's baggy top. His eyes grazed on the scene before him and rested on the broken crate in the water.
Cleopatra, what is the meaning of this?
Cleo stepped forward to answer.
Captain Chef, this fool stumbled into us and caused us to lose the fruits over the edge.
The lizard man stepped forward as well.
Sir, we can still save them. It's just a bit of seawater.
Captain Chef slowly closed his eyes and lazily turned his head side to side.
The blood oranges, although protected by their peels, will have already absorbed the flavor of the salty sea. You know better, Silver Steve.
I couldn't help but chuckle to myself over the revelation of the lizard man's name. Silver Steve, really. This situation was the most ridiculous thing I had ever seen. Since yesterday, anyway. It seemed that letting my amusement slip out was a mistake because I caught the attention of Captain Chef. His eyes settled on me the way livestock's eyes might have settled on a feeding trough from across a barnyard. He made his way straight to me, regardless of what or who was in his way, which just so happened to be Travis. Travis tried to say something clever, but whatever came out of his mouth was muffled by the palm of Captain Chef's hand. He pushed Travis aside by his face as one would brush aside some weeds while walking afield. My poor comrade flipped a full 360 degrees, head over heels into the ocean. He bobbed in the water with a stunned look on his face, probably wondering how he just got there, while Captain Chef spoke to me.
I see that you are amused,
He managed to say. A little. Silver Steve is kind of a silly name, I guess, I said. His eyes narrowed. I felt as thought I was standing before a bull that was contemplating the decision to charge.
Why do you think I would keep such a silly crew?
I pondered his question for a moment. Well, Silver Steve here, being some kind of lizard or snake man, probably has a powerful sense of smell when he used his tongue to taste the air. I imagine this helps him with the aroma of food. Captain Chef's eyes softened, and he showed the slightest hint of a satisfied smirk.
That's right. What about Cleopatra here?
I looked the redhead over while she shot daggers at me with her eyes. I had no idea if she had any particular culinary powers. They weren't obvious. The only thing that stood out in that moment was her desire to carve my traveling companion, and I upped like roasts. I felt like I needed to take a stab at the question. What would be the most stereotypical answer for this fantasy world of migrating islands and absurdity? Does she have fire magic? I said.
Correct again.
Captain Chef was pleased. Cleo produced a small flame in the palm of her hand. She made it dance about and make shapes.
I can control the temperature of any fire to within 0.5 degree, cooking food right up to the height of perfection,
she boasted. Grog crossed his arms and looked down at me, darning me to guess what his power was. Captain Chef gave me a similar look, and I felt the pressure. He was a giant oaf that liked to talk like a pirate. What kind of culinary power could he possibly have? I thought and thought, but came up with nothing, and just decided to say so. Honestly, I have no idea, I said.
Yar, I be a master of meats, whether from land or sea. I know where the tastiest cuts be,
said Grog. He flexed his muscles, apparently just because. Right. Well, that is quite the crew you have there. I noticed Travis was pulling himself up out of the water. I reached down and gave him a hand, helping to pull him back up onto the pier. If you will excuse us, though, we have some business.
Not so fast,
interrupted Captain Chef.
I didn't become a master of the culinary arts and a master of this ship without knowing people, and you owe us for the property you destroyed.
Yeah, what are we supposed to cook for breakfast tomorrow?
Cleo chimed in. Travis and I looked at each other and shrugged our shoulders. What do you want us to do? I asked. We don't have anything to give you in return. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know,
said Captain Chef. His eyes had hardened on me again, like he was staring into my soul.
Demonstrate to me how sorry you are by cooking us lunch.
The crew and Travis gasped in unison.
Arg, this scallywag knows not of the culinary code,
said Grog.
Are you insane?
said Silver Steve.
Just let me cook them for lunch.
A fireball appeared in Cleo's hand. Captain Chef held up his chubby hand to quiet his crew.
You trust in the culinary way, do you not?
Of course,
replied Cleo.
But how will letting this loser cook us lunch get our ingredients back?
That isn't what I asked you,
said Captain Chef. Cleo and the crew were silent.
You do not need to know how, only why. Fate has brought these souls to us, and we will connect with them in the most ancient way possible, by sharing a meal, as the way teaches us.
Yes, Chef, they replied in unison. He turned his attention back to me.
Show me the strength of your spirit and the authenticity in your heart. We have the best equipped and stocked kitchen in all the islands. Use it to solve this problem and settle your debt.
Captain Chef clapped his hands, and his ship bustled with activity. Members of his crew rushed about bringing crates of ingredients and equipment to the shore. Cleo and Grog kindly escorted us to the rocky beach where an area had been cleared and a huge mobile kitchen was being assembled. There were all sizes and shapes of pots, pans, baking sheets, and at least 5 different kinds of ovens. Baskets of cooking utensils were placed before me. I recognized some simple things, like spatulas and spoons, but many of them were oddly shaped, and I had no idea what they could be for. The crew rolled up barrels and barrels of ingredients. Eggs, salted meats, fresh vegetables, spices, butter, cheeses, and breads were available for us to make whatever we wished. We seemed to have everything except fresh fruits, I noticed. Travis and I were dressed in aprons and chef's hats, and left to ourselves in the grotesquely overdone kitchen. A long table with a white tablecloth was set up. Captain Chef, Cleo, Silver Steve, and Grog sat facing us, looking unimpressed. I knew that I had to cook the best meal ever to get out of this situation, and I had no idea what to make. The fate of our mission would depend on how I performed in the coming moments.
You have 30 minutes.
Said Captain Chef.
Begin.